Who knows where the cold wind blows? I ask my friends, but nobody knows. Who am I to believe in love? Oh, love ain't no stranger. I look around and what did I see? Broken-hearted people staring at me, all searching 'cause they still believed. Oh, love ain't no stranger. Hey folks, I left that in there because that was a little vocal cord exercise I'm doing. So whatever, just leave it there where it is. Don't judge. Don't judge, please. Thanks so much for joining us today. This week's episode's going to be on bias, your medical bias or your holistic bias or bias in general, to help discern where you're missing some great opportunities in your life as a result of that bias that shows up. And we all have it. So it's not about judging or pointing a finger. It's simply about becoming aware. Enjoy.
Welcome to Frankly Speaking with Dr. Wade. This show was created for and inspired by the thousands of patients I've served, so it's time for me to speak up and speak out on their behalf. With a wide range of experts, we bring you weekly insights, diving deep into topics of controversy to bust through the sugar coating that keeps you and your family stuck in the mainstream.
All right, folks. The bias that we have is oftentimes bleeding through in relationships. It's involved in interpretations. It's involved in a matter of perspective and viewing points and points of view, which you've heard me say many times. But the reality is that's what paints your reality, is your bias on it. So if, let's say, we talk about the Chicago Cubs, whether you like them or not, whether you have an opinion or not, or maybe it's the St. Louis Cardinals, or maybe it's the Milwaukee Brewers, whatever it might be another sports team. You have a bias based on your experience, and that bias can come from, hey, it's who I grew up watching as a kid. No problem. More power to you. But recognize that bias as it unfolds in your interpretations, in your conversations with folks, your judgments towards them, your judgments towards yourself, how you see the world through that lens. And why is this important? It's important from a matter of where patients struggle with their health, and oftentimes has to do with their medical bias or their holistic bias or their spiritual bias, as though certain things mean certain things, when not only is it a bias, there's belief sets, there's belief systems, there's personal experience, there's a number of things that flavor this, but we're going to talk about bias today specifically in how it relates to your ability to accept an idea that may help you, that you literally close off to because of your preconceived bias. It could be a bias about alternative healthcare in general, and that it's untrustworthy and it's pseudoscience, especially if you see any dogmatic, and I say that, dogmatic sarcastically, pharmaceutical-derived research, which is only purported as science when really much of that is agendized, propagandized, manipulated research to look scientific but promote the problem. And I'm just going to give you a real simple example. We all know there's a opiate crisis, okay? There is when that came on the market as a result of, first of all, the healthcare system shifting gears and starting to focus on pain as the primary means of treatment. So classification of pain, therefore, we're going to treat pain. And pain became the focus, not treating, let alone the condition, versus not even close to the cause, but treating a condition. Now they're going to treat pain as the problem. So this company purported or portrayed the fact that drugs, the opiates, were safe and effective. Well, certainly they're effective, and there's probably going to always be a demand for them because that's what those drugs do. They create a high, a rush. They numb the body, and there's always a want for numbing the body in the future. So what's traumatizing and devastating from that is this company laid down the tracks as though this was safe and effective, and several years later we're realizing how destructive it actually was and is the whole time. Yet this is the same group of information proponents, and they share that information as though they have a cutting-edge breakthrough drug that's safe and effective, and we go right on back to believing that it's all accurate again, and great, this is going to be the next savior, and it's implementing into our treatment protocols in the mainstream, only to realize years down the road again that it causes damage. And so why I'm sharing this piece is wrap your head around the possibility that your bias is not accurate. I already have with mine. I question this every day. When I look at speaking out through, for example, this podcast, one of the things I checked in my desire to share information was, do I need a platform to go make myself right? Do I need to feed an ego? Do I need to be right? No, I don't. In fact, I'm not a fan of social media from the aspect of, hey, look at me over here, I'm splashing, would you please take notice here? And oftentimes, as I've been told and shared with by people I consult with about marketing and advertising, is they said, why are you not advertising or marketing your products more? You have a unique niche, you have a great product and a great service, and obviously your people love you. And I'm a little old school from the fact that I look at things as maybe this is basic, but a soft sell, hard sell, and then there's no sell. And when I look at my role is to serve my patients. It's also I run a business, but it's not the business doesn't drive every behavior. Solving patients' problems does, and I happen to be a business owner. So now it's finding a way to A, be profitable, but B, provide an outstanding service and solve problems. And that's what I believe a business is there to solve problems, not to be subsidized by the government. So when I share this, the biases that I have are going to lean into the body's healthy, the body's capable, your body is intelligent, your body has an immune response, your body already has an immune system on board that is designed to recognize bacteria, pathogens, funguses, molds, and whatnot. It's there. But the inability to adapt to some of the things we don't adapt to doesn't mean you need a drug from the outside all the time. That's a bias, of course, from someone who is in the drug model. Then you always need a drug for whatever symptom, and they are harmless, and they're nothing but beneficial, and that is seen through their bias lens. You as a patient are subject to that bias, and if you give that and empower that provider the power to have that bias over you, you have abdicated your ability to see clearly what may actually be clouded, what truth may be clouded by that approach. Now, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not taking that position. I'm saying become aware of the bias. Become aware of their bias. Be aware of my bias. Be aware of your bias. Because the significance is you choosing your healthcare provider is going to come from your bias. Your ability to follow through with care or recommendations or a drug or a treatment protocol or develop a lifestyle habit change is going to come from you through your bias, what you're willing to accept and what you're not. To a patient, this might look like this in real life. The patient comes in for help for sciatica and shoulder pain, and they also have a history of digestive stress, as an example, and so they're on some reflux meds, like a PPI, a proton pump inhibitor, like, let's say, omeprazole. And they've been on it for 3 years. And they didn't always have it, or they did struggle with reflux for a little while, and then finally they got some treatment for it, and now they're feeling better. But their musculoskeletal system, is also inflamed and eliciting some pain. So the bottom line is the patient comes in for help. I evaluate them. I tell them how that visit's going to go. I'm going to run some tests. I'm going to look at you functionally. We're going to determine where your body's functioning well and where it's not functioning well. And then we can build a program of care, or make some adjustments or look at some nutritional pieces that can help your body not only get back on track functionally, but stay on track and then heal and mend better. Because here's some other things that are showing up, which could be imbalance, could be, some abnormal wear and tear on the knee and the hip, and how that's translating to the body compensating, and how it affects the shoulder and the headaches and all this. So I paint a picture, and I'm being very rudiment with that for a reason. The summary is the patient hears that through the patient's lens. The patient sees whether that relates to them or not through their belief set / their bias about whether or not they can trust me as a provider or as a chiropractor or as a natural health care provider, or that I even have enough knowledge to be addressing how their mid-back and or neck or cervical, their neck pain headaches relates to their lack of ability to digest normal, and how they're not functioning well digestively, and that's part of the problem as well. And then I tie in the fact that it could be, which one, chicken or the egg, which one came first. Structural problems in the spine can relate to a weakened functioning stomach. Just like you can have balance in the spine and have a chronically stressed digestive system and or lifestyle, or chronic exposure to stress, whether it be emotional or physical or chemical. And that will relay and also trigger spinal problems. So you can have both. Now that person has to hear that through their bias, and they'll either believe that and understand it, it'll make some sense to them, partial sense, or they're completely disconnected and it doesn't make any sense, and their solution is going to be, nope, that sounds like too much work, doc, I want a drug. So that bias on my end as a provider, I'm aware of it, so I basically come in neutral with the patient, and I start educating them from the basics. And really, it starts with questions. First of all, how'd you find us? How'd you hear about us? What do you know about our office? I heard it from Bob. He said you did a great job with this, with his shoulder and his neck, and so I thought I'd try it. Great. At least you got some understanding. Some of you have heard me go into this before in terms of the questions I ask to find out if it's a good fit for the patient. What I'm really looking at, as well as me, and whether I want to help that person, meaning how willing are they going to be to follow through with anything I address, versus they're going to their medical doctor because they are tipping over fainting, and they go to ER and they say you need to visit with a cardiologist, and then they go and they're like, hey, I'm here, I'm at your mercy, what do I got to do? Now that emotional bias, that they might hate being there and not want to go on a drug, but they also don't feel like there's, in many cases, another alternative. And so that's where there's no judgment to the patient as much as understanding and compassion. What if, I love giving patients choices. What if the patient's given a choice by their cardiologist? What if they say, hey, are you going to go home as a 52-year-old man or a 60-year-old man and start changing your diet and your lifestyle and get your cholesterol down to a healthy range? No, they don't ask you that question. They just give you the drug. And so that bias in medicine is that you need this drug. You need this drug or you're not going to make it. And we have set criterion to know when you need it and when you don't. And it's the last law. I know it sounds ridiculous, but that's pretty much what happens. Lobbyists set the standard keeps changing, therefore it exposes a bigger volume and population that can go on drugs, and now we're in this cycle where more and more people need to have this drug just to survive, and statins are one of those. That's why cholesterol numbers continue to drop from a scientific pharmaceutical side that state you need to be on them sooner and you need to be on more of them. And so I don't share that bias. I come from the other side of the equation that says, whoa, wait, our body's amazing, and we know that through an adjustment, we can change blood pressure by 17 and 10 millimeters of mercury of pressure, respectively. In fact, just this week, I had a patient come in on Monday, reactivated, and I hadn't checked her heart rate in, over a year, because she hadn't been in over 6 months, but she was coming in for other issues, and so I followed up today and re-examined, or rather 2 days ago, and checked her blood pressure. It was high. It was 160, 159 over 95. And that's not, quote unquote, normal for her. So I said, all right, let's just wait. I'm just getting a baseline. You don't need to have what we call white coat syndrome, where you're, all of a sudden you're nervous about this. It wasn't like she expected to get her blood pressure checked. I just checked it, and I wanted to rule out certain things. And her BPM, or beats per minute, were 83, which is high. Should be right around 60. So knowing that this individual is overweight, has an autoimmune disorder, and is on multiple medications, and the list is not getting smaller in her case, it's going to get larger based on how she lives and what she is accountable for. So I'm not here trying to change her. I'm simply here trying to get a baseline. And my bias is I see the body as capable, as it's possible for her to have a better life and reduce those, but it takes two people. So now I have to respect her bias as well, her viewpoint, and what she's willing to accept as a truth or not. And so in her case, she kind of wraps her head around, I'm just me. I have always had problems. I need these things to survive. And I'm not going to get in the way of that because I respect and appreciate her. I'm going to help her with what she wants help with, but I'm also going to help lead her whenever she's open to making positive changes that will help her in the long run, because the short run and the long run are two different pieces. And so to be able to see that clearly and put this whole thing in perspective is I want to be able to offer her help. I want to offer her hope, realistic hope. And I also want to set a plan for her that gives her choices along the way to participate at a level she's willing and able. So I adjusted her and went right back within seconds later, like within a minute after adjusting her. And her blood pressure was already down, actually more than 17 points, 18 points on the systolic. So she went down from 159 down to 141. And she went to 141. And she went down to 84. So she went down 11. So my cardiologist friend, Dr. Jack Wolfson, actually shared with me that chiropractic, literally, statistically, I've always seen it in my years that chiropractic can improve blood pressure just from pre and post adjustment checks. And yet what we want to see is how lasting is it, right? Well, Dr. Jack pointed out and said, hey, it's 17 and 10, and he's a cardiologist. I'm like, dude, I never knew exactly what to expect out of it. I expected reductions. And he goes, yeah, 17 and 10, you can repeatedly expect that chiropractic can do that. And I'm like, awesome. So in this case, she was 18 and 11. So I'll take those numbers because it's in the patient's favor as well. Now, she still has some high blood pressure. It's still something to watch. But guess what? We influenced it, as you heard. And her bias could possibly change. But it's still there, and I honor the fact that it's still there because I'm not trying to change her. I'm trying to support her in her health, but give her every opportunity to become and grow, because someone that supports her gives her a chance to make change versus someone who automatically assumes her health is out of her hands and it is in something else like a drug or the doctor. I am there as a liaison of support and to assist her and to help navigate and to facilitate her health, but she is responsible for it. And that is something I want to teach her along the way, that she has a chance to change. Now, mind you, this woman is in her 50s, late 50s, so I don't expect to change a lot of habits with her, but she certainly deserves my support. And I share that with you. Essentially, understand your bias. Your bias bleeds through in many ways, shapes, or forms. It's your viewpoint about your dentist. It's a viewpoint about dentists in general. You have a bias about certain foods or people who are vegetarian and eat certain foods. You have a bias about those who don't go vegetarian or vegan, and you have a bias against them or toward them. It doesn't mean it's against, but you have judgments in there that are your biases. And again, it's not making your biases wrong. It's to become aware of how they bleed into your inability to expand into your best self. That's what I'm talking about. So if I go to sleep thinking everyone should sleep, everyone should believe like me, and everyone needs to see things the way I do because of the body, I'm opening my world up to more frustration, more struggle, and definitely more pain. Why? Because it's unrealistic to think that someone else's behavior needs to be changed as a result of my viewpoint. There was a younger doc, me, in my early ages that almost got burnt out because I was trying to change the world rather than and change people's influence, and they don't care about health. They're just not changing. And it was really because my bias was bleeding through everything. And so my ability to see that, step back, and go, wait, they don't need changing. They need support. Help them with what they want help with. Help them along their path, along their journey. And that's where this started. Once I got clear with that, not only did practice become more fun, I was able to let go of the need to change anybody, the need for them to see what they see. It's on their terms. And back to business and marketing, it's because to support a patient through their process and not focusing on sales versus focusing on results, I focus on results and let the patient guide where they want to go from there. But really to set them free from the dependence. And that's what the mainstream model is really a wolf in sheep's clothing, is that just by these exams and not following up, but going through the motion of taking the medications, you're basically indoctrinated into the loop of mainstream medicine. That means you're not going to get out. Once you're diagnosing and treating, you're chasing symptoms. So that becomes a slippery slope. If you have any questions or comments or realizations or great aha moments with this, I'd love to hear them, love to have you share them. Please put them down in the comment section below, or feel free to PM me at AnonsonChiropractic@gmail.com, or go right onto Facebook with Frankly Speaking with Dr. Wade. So please like, share, and review, and grateful for you all. Hope you've enjoyed this episode on bias and where it bleeds through and how you can become aware of yours to have better results. Until next time, ciao.
Thank you much for listening to this week's episode. I look forward to any feedback and or questions you might have. Direct them to our Facebook page, Frankly Speaking, Dr. Wade at Facebook. Okay, my fellow health warriors, it's time to head over to iTunes, franklyspeakingdrwade.com. There you can rate, review, and subscribe, as well as share so more of our brothers and sisters can grow to realize their voice. Speaking up means you matter. So, get on it. This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views expressed are not medical advice and are not meant to replace the medical advice of your doctor. This podcast, including Dr. Wade Anonson and his guests, disclaim responsibility for any adverse effects you may experience from the specific use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse and accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about the guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements and advertisements for such services or product. Individuals on this podcast may have direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.